Hi crafty folks, Amy here with Amy's Wares, and I have a batch of fun Santa Christmas cards to share with you. To start, I'm going to show you a bunch of the products that I used and kind of had prepared in advance. I have these 3 stamp sets and the coordinating dies from My Favorite Things. I don't know if they're still available anywhere. I kind of have a feeling they might not be, but this is kind of just some inspiration to give you an idea of how to batch a bunch of cards. Now, as you can see, I stamped and die cut out a bunch of these. I actually did it with my Misty while I was watching a little movie with my family, knowing that I was going to need to batch a bunch of cards. So I got these ready to go, but again, you could use whatever Santa you have in your crafty stash, or maybe like a little snowman or something cute that's easy to kind of mass produce. And I have a couple mini ink pads here from Catherine Pooler. I'm going to be using the color Samba and the color In the Park. Those are the 2 that I used for all the stamping with the Santas. And I have this stamp set. These are sentiments from Catherine Pooler, and you may have seen in a previous video I actually white heat embossed on white all in one pass, and then just actually cut these all out as strips, and you're going to see how I'm able to use them and match them perfectly to my card, but I will link that video as well below. I have some card bases that are A2 size and ready to go, and 2 embossing folders from Altenew. I have Modern Squares 3D and Angled Mosaic 3D, and I'm going to use this lightweight, it's kind of like a gray color cardstock. It's, I think, maybe 65-pound, inexpensive. I had it in my crafty stash, but I am going to emboss all of these panels in this embossing folder just to kind of create an interesting background for all of my cards. So I will run those through off screen in my die cutting machine just to kind of get those ready to go. So as you can see, I'm kind of working in batches, and here are a couple photos of the finished card. I was able to make 10 of these, which takes a nice chunk out of my number needed for Christmas cards this year, but here's a close-up of one of them. You can see I used those sentiment strips, and I'll show you how I worked through this process. Now, I feel like in my memory, I think Kathy Zielske did something with these stamps and with an embossing folder, I'm pretty sure. So thank you for that inspiration, Kathy Zielske. She has such amazing, clean and simple designs, so I'm sure she inspired this in my mind. But I wanted to be able to make a bunch of cards quickly. I tend to make, I think I need around 100 every year, so this took out, 10 of them out of what I need for my cards, and I'm so pleased with how these turned out. I'm just taking this light gray cardstock that's been embossed and attaching it directly to the card bases with some tape runner, and as you can see, there's a small white border, and then I have 4 different Santa designs here, and I'm just kind of laying out the coordinating sentiments that I want to use with it. Now, like I said, these aren't the sentiments that came with the stamp. These are Catherine Pooler ones, and you can't see what they say yet, but I'm able to read them with the embossing, and I'm just kind of lining them up, figuring out the layout for these first 4 cards, and then I'm going to show you how I end up coloring these sentiment strips so that they are a perfect match for the stamping. Now, I have this low-tack tape here from, I can't remember the name of the company. I always forget it, but I will link it below. And I'm basically just using that to hold down these strips to make it easy for me to apply the ink. Now, because they are white heat embossed on white cardstock, the embossing is actually going to resist the ink that I lay down on top of it. Now, you can do ink blending like I am here, or you can actually just pounce that strip right into the actual ink pad and apply the ink that way. But I just recently refilled these ink pads, and I know they're crazy juicy, and I don't want it to be too dark of a green. I want it to really match the green of the stamping, so I chose to just do the ink blending. And then I'm using a paper towel just to wipe off that excess ink that ends up on top of that embossing powder that's resisting it. So now I can just pluck these right off the little strip of low-tack tape, and I'm going to use these thin foam strips that I get from Amazon just to pop up the sentiment strips right on this embossed background. So that's going to hold the sentiment strip down nice and give it a little bit of dimension, but not a lot of bulk, which I don't want because I'm going to be mailing out a bunch of cards for Christmas, and obviously I don't want to pay extra postage. So initially I was thinking I was going to pop up all the little Santas as well, but I kind of like the way that they just sit right behind that sentiment strip, and it saves me time not having to mess with little fiddly bits of foam tape. So if you do want to pop up your you know, a little critter or whatever you end up using, by all means, go ahead and go for that. But like I said, I like the simplicity of just kind of popping the Santa down behind the little popped up sentiment strip. So I'm just going to apply all 4 of these down here. I love this one with the candy cane. I think this might be my favorite, and I love having the coordinating dies in this case, just because, as you can see, there's little fiddly bits there with the candy cane, and that would not be fun to have to fussy cut that out. So this one I'm just kind of kicking it off to the side as if he's kind of walking off that little sentiment strip. And then I decided to add some blingage. I have some white iridescent sequins here that I'm going to put down in just kind of a smattering all over the front of this card front. I like to do odd numbers, so I'll typically do like 3 on the top and 2 on the bottom, just because I find odd numbers more visually appealing, but you do you here. And I'm laying down some Bearly Art glue just in little blobs of liquid glue, and then I'm using my jewel picker that I got from Doodles Paper Playground, and I'm just going to attach those right onto the front of the card. So very simple design. It's got some texture, it's got some interest with the critter. I do decide to come in a little bit and add a sentiment onto the inside of the card as well. So once I get these done, I decide to grab this other this other stamp set from Catherine Pooler. It has these nice kind of bold, interesting sentiments, and I'm just loading that up in my MISTI. I did think ahead on the next ones before I attached all the card fronts and all the components to the front of the card. I did think ahead and just ended up kind of batch stamping this on the inside of the other cards that I hadn't prepared yet. So find different ways to save yourself time by having different components ready to go, whether that's your card bases or whether just kind of cutting out all the panels and embossing them all in one shot or stamping them all in one shot. But this is the basic finished design here. Here's one card, Time to Jingle and Mingle, and Merriest Christmas. So I did end up applying that stamp, like I said, in all 10 cards, but they have slightly different sentiments on the front, and the 4 different Santas to choose from, and the blingage, the 2 different embossing folders. So I had a lot of fun kind of mixing and matching a lot of stuff from my crafty stash, and able to get more use out of them. But I'm so happy with this clean and simple design, and these stamps are just so stinking cute, from my favorite things. So I hope they're still available, but if they're not, like I said, use whatever you have in your crafty stash. I'm sure you have a Santa that you can use, or maybe a snowman or something like that, but just use a clean and simple design. Use your embossing folders and some colored cardstock and switch it up and batch yourself a bunch of holiday cards. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing, and I'll check you next time. Bye.